Welcome, everyone, on this beautiful day, this 12th of Virgo, with the amazing perceiver, Joel Schafer,
Thank you, brother.
who has altered the construct for me and for so many others. And today he joins us to talk about something really powerful for me, and I think for him too, amongst many other subjects we might touch on, because we're allowed to diverge every which way, because this world is too mysterious to try to put lines and rectangles around it. But I want to start with the topic of what the Toltec seers called the known, the unknown, and the unknowable. And with that, I'll start with a little bit from The Fire from Within, which is the 7th book, which I recommend to people who are reaching higher levels, basically. So here it goes. He said that not to seek order, this is Juan Matus, was one of the great mistakes that the ancient seers made. A deadly consequence of that mistake was their assumption that the unknown and the unknowable are the same thing. It was up to the new seers to correct that error. They set up boundaries and defined the unknown as something that is veiled from men, shrouded perhaps by a terrifying context, but which nonetheless is within man's reach. The unknown becomes the known at a given time. The unknowable, on the other hand, is the indescribable, the unthinkable, and the unrealizable. It is something that will never be known to us, and yet it is there, dazzling, and at the same time horrifying in its vastness. So then Carlos asked how we make the distinction. He said that whenever what is taken to be the unknown turns out to be the unknowable, the results are disastrous. Seers feel drained, confused. A terrible oppression takes possession of them. Their bodies lose tone. Their reasoning and sobriety wander away aimlessly. For the unknowable has no energizing effects whatsoever. It is not within human reach, therefore it should not be intruded upon foolishly or even prudently. The new seers realized that they had to be prepared to pay exorbitant prices for the faintest contact with it. And then just a bit later down, I'm skipping, just to finish. Carlos asked him how they found the distinction. I have to skip some stuff. Here we go. What happened after the distinction between the unknown and the unknowable was realized, I asked. The new cycle began, he replied. The distinction is the frontier between the old and the new. Everything that the new seers have done stems from understanding that distinction.
So profound. So, such an important key piece to, the continuity of knowledge. It's, I think, why the Toltecs are so impressive to me. It's just not something I've ever heard anyone explain. I've worked with a lot of people who have done a lot of power plants and have wandered into areas that are very dangerous. It is available. You can accidentally, go too far with your perception to the point that you're encountering, something that isn't meant to, be. It's possible to witness, like he talks about, that it's dazzling, that it's available to observe, but it's the non-human part of the dark sea of awareness. There's a very small part of the dark sea of awareness that we can relate to, and we're not. I'm sure there'll be further understandings as we evolve, and maybe the unknowable will become something that we can interact with over time, and it becomes, moves more into the realm of the unknown. But when somebody is on psychedelics and they cross over into this area where they're observing infinity, and like people have to prop them up because their body stops working in the way that it would. You have to be like, you become so raw and exposed to seeing the infinite. And if you don't have a guide, and you're suddenly very vulnerable to all kinds of experiences that could get you very lost, and mislead you, and cause all kinds of confusion. And so that's why the dreaming gates are so important to learn, and why the art of stalking is so important to learn. These are like the things that make it possible to be able to understand what's happening to you, and understand the warnings and the pitfalls of the old sorcerers and what happened to them. And the beauty of this is that the unknowable is so enticing, and a warrior is called to have this experience for themselves. And so you prepare yourself to understand the difference, just like they explained it. And it becomes up to you to know the difference.
Yeah.
So it's the ultimate sort of test of whether you're going to get lost or you're going to end up taking the path of freedom. And so these illusions, or the high adventure of the unknown, becomes a really seductive thing for a shaman.
Or do you
And
mean
he
the
can,
unknowable?
well, no, the high adventure of the unknown is just
Oh
where
yeah,
you start using heightened awareness
that's the exciting part.
to get, to really utilize this world to its fullest. But it can take you off the path of freedom because there's so much power. And so
Yeah.
Don Juan referred to the Nuwahulian as having gotten caught in the high adventure of the unknown, and
Mm.
not deviating toward the path of freedom, because he probably was so close to the death fire, and Juan Matus was not, right? So not Nuwahulian was always walking on the edge of the abyss. He had not taken care of himself up until the day that he was saved. So he was just a reckless with his energy, and so he had to live a totally different way than all the other Nawals,
Yeah.
um, and that made him very unique. But yeah,
Yeah.
we're dealing with something that can destroy you, and so we develop the respect as a dream traveler, to not try and personify things.
Yeah. To try and fit the unknown into the known, and then to try and fit the unknowable into the unknown, it doesn't
Exactly.
work. That's
Yeah.
why
That, that
the unknown stays the unknown. It's perceived, but it's not known.
well,
And
and
or anyway, from my experience and from what I've read, that's what it seems. But like you say, perhaps as we change ourselves, as we become something else than human, or certain different kinds of humans, then the limits of what is the unknown and the limits of what is the unknowable change with us. So
yeah,
there
we might.
really are no boundaries. We're just trying to push these boundaries even farther and farther.
Yeah, it may be that it's like it's preparing us. Those encounters with the unknowable is preparing us for.
Beyond
It's like a sample that can
what's to
destroy
come.
you if you don't wait until the right time. And it might be something to teach generations and prepare them for there will be a time where we expand in a way that makes it, we become more, we don't have to lose our humanness, but we become more than what we are. Like our
Yeah.
luminous cocoon will change shapes. It'll probably get really skinny and long and tall and more designed for travel.
Yeah, the death defiers were said to have made their egg into a line,
Uh-huh.
basically, and that allowed them to extend their lives way
Which is what
longer.
inorganic beings are. They have a
Right.
very small gap, and so their life force doesn't escape them as easily. And so
That's
you can
also
do
why
that
they prey on us, because we just emanate so much power that,
because we have so much power and
yeah,
energy that we're unaware of, and because we're so kind of, we don't respect ourselves as what we really are. We've been reduced down to nothing compared to the infinite potential of what we're capable of. So it's
hmm,
just easy to control. I mean, that's how it's done, is just through that mind virus. But
yeah,
yeah,
most of
that
us.
for those of us that come out of that eventually, like Don Juan said, he vanquished his mind. That means that he was able to suspend the flyer's, direct uh, mind virus on. But it doesn't mean, he was also said, I have a companion for life. I have to be careful in every moment because
Yeah.
the flyers adjust their intentions.
Do you mean
They
his
run.
his ally, his companion?
No, I mean, when he's talking about he has companions of allies, but he also was saying that we as these humans all have a companion for life, which is the flyer's mind. It never goes away completely. He was able to vanquish it. But until we do this on a large enough scale, even he had his two minds that were always, because for most people, the flyer's mind just keeps them in the merchant mind, materialism or religion or pseudoscience or something to hypnotize them to make them incapable of expanding their perception to the capacity of what we're capable of, or to move beyond the limits of our past, or the stories that we've been told about what we are. And so, even though Don Juan vanquished his mind, the program, it gets very advanced. It tries to use him, tries to control him in more and more clever ways. And
Yeah.
that's the warrior's development, is that you keep advancing one level of you move away from one level of the flyers to the next level, and you start to understand the flyers. You start to stalk the inorganic beings. By
Yeah.
stalking yourself, you understand how they're influencing you. Because they're going to try to, like someone like me, they're going to try to convince me that I'm special, and run illusions of grandeur, right? So that even though I've come out of victimhood, now I'm going to start thinking I'm victorious.
Yeah.
And the trick is to stay neutral and to see that
Exactly.
everybody's on the same playing field, and that at any moment anybody could have an assemblage point shift that would reveal eternity to them. It might be a person that's been living on the street their whole life. In fact, they may be more likely to have that happen than all the
Oh
people
yeah.
that are buffered by the wealth of the false
Comfort.
illusion of security.
Yeah, that's
So,
why I feel like you're one of the people that I know who can understand when I say that I'm trying to channel so much mystery that
mm,
I'm basically on the edge of what these people on the streets are past,
sure.
basically, where they're perceiving this, but they haven't developed enough maybe barriers or filters or ways to just channel that power. There's also that we develop the capacity to develop it.
Mm,
But yeah, it's very confronting to see how little we can actually understand, um, and to let that go, like to
yeah.
not completely, perhaps, like there's still that curiosity.
Mm,
I like Jason Bashir's, of course. I found you through him, and
yeah.
he introduced me to the Bronze Book, or also, it's called the Colburn Bible, and it's been very fascinating because there's so many analogies with Castaneda and the seers. Like
Cool.
I could read the first verse of the first chapter of the Book of Creation, and it would almost read like what I just read about the unknowable. That
Cool. Mm,
to try to understand that which is basically, I'm paraphrasing, that which is beyond our capacity will lead to disbelief and madness.
mm,
But that we still want to try. That even though we can't really understand it, that's what we're doing now.
mhm,
That it's still better to have maybe a dim reflection of what we can make out of it in order to give us that human, that goal striving part of the human experience. That
mm,
if we just accepted, oh, okay, the unknowable is beyond our reach, and now we just sat and then didn't do anything about it, then it would sort of be another trap. So we have to. It's kind of like you said, the razor's edge. We
mm,
constantly are trying to balance exploration with grounding, right?
mhm,
Going up with going down.
mhm,
Uh, and it's a fascinating journey. There's so many techniques. There's so many, like I know you're really good with gazing,
mm,
and I don't know what else. Maybe the magical passes,
mm.
right?
Yeah, the magical passes are enough to help you walk in and out of other worlds once you understand the simplicity. The passes, you're literally just grabbing energy on the out periphery of your cocoon, and you're
Yeah,
lending it to your organs so that they can use their magical capacity in the second attention. And then you're not just this physical human being, you become energy, you perceive energy. The
Yeah.
danger is if you learn to see without being a warrior, then you will become meek in the face of the unknown. You will have encountered something that you weren't prepared for because you didn't develop the indifference. So Toltecs are very, it sounds, they repeat the words attachment and indifference a lot, and a lot of people misunderstand that as like, oh, I'm just going to walk away from society. It's not about
Yeah.
that. It's a type of, it's very heart-based. You're becoming indifferent as a means to survive, not as a means because you're cold. Even though
Yeah.
it looks cold, it looks like an animal, like a predator, you look like a bird of prey when you're
That's
in
why
your
they talk about
power.
the ego so much.
Well, all sorcerers have relationships with birds. Like Don Juan was able to be a crow. Don Hanaro had a much greater capacity. He was higher up the chain as far as his capacity in relationship to animal.
Hmm.
Being able to go into deeper layers. So he had access to things that Juan Matus did not.
Yeah.
So everybody is different. Some people have owl medicine, which is really powerful,
Wow.
really difficult to work with. Carlos, him turning into a crow with the datura plant and the way in which datura affected him, that medicine enslaves men, and Carlos
Hmm.
was equally enslaved by inorganic beings. Like Juan Matus would point out in the books, like, Carlos, you're doing things that I would have never even fucking thought of doing.
Yeah.
Like, you've broken all the rules, somehow
They did
survived.
something that their whole lineage
Yeah,
had no record of.
yeah.
Him and Carol, when
And
they
think
went to
about it,
that.
like he was so dense that Don
Yeah.
Juan had to like blast him with power plants, and then he still didn't even believe any of the changes that were happening to him. He just kept telling himself that they were tricking him. And so the fact he could remain that dense just meant that, he kind of, Carlos Don Juan almost created a monster in a sense
Hmm.
and set him up with the sorcerers. By leaving the world, he left him to these women and sent him into a trap, and
Yeah.
they were told to kill him.
Yeah.
That a warrior is given a task within these apprenticeships that you have to give it your all. And that's the only way he would have ever discovered his resources that Don Juan had lent him in the second attention. He had moved his perception to places where he could
Mm.
give him
We're
gifts of
losing you.
power, just like that's the fire.
So we heard that's the only way.
Are we back?
Yeah. You cut out. Yeah. You're coming back. You're coming back.
Cool.
I stopped your upload to give you better bandwidth. But
Thank you.
yeah, so I know it's like our masters, the best masters or the best guides, maybe is a better word, set us up for really extreme challenges
Yeah.
because they trust, I guess, in their disciples. They trust in themselves indirectly that they have given them enough tools. And for me, there's
Yeah.
also the big, well, for everyone, there's the big question of having enough energy. This is a big theme in the books,
Uh-huh.
is having enough energy for the answers, having enough energy to see, having enough energy to dream. And
Very cool. Yeah.
you introduced me to Twitter Spaces, for example, and I'll often find myself in spaces where I can feel that there isn't enough energy for me to say what I want to say.
Yep.
So I have to fall back like on a lower thing and try to help them. Basically my main message now is build up your energy because you don't have enough for the answers. Right?
Yeah, so I mean, this is where your relationship with the mother and the sun, the consciousness of the sun, and then the earth are just totally capable of lending us or helping us reestablish the energy that we've lost by teaching us how to recapitulate in
Yeah.
creative ways. But it required very daring men to discover the Toltec knowledge, and it's going to
Yeah.
require daring men to be able to, move into the capacity to understand what it's like to have a lot of energy and have proper outlets so that that energy isn't overwhelming. It can be difficult to run too much intensity. So
Yeah.
the magical passes serve as a means to redistribute that intensity. And you may find yourself at later stages doing them all the time,
Yeah, I
like
am doing it a
all,
lot.
yeah. And there's ones that can build your energy and ones that can help you go to sleep. There's ones that can,
Hmm.
assist you when you haven't slept in a very long time. I've stayed up for 7 days straight driving all these warriors all over New Mexico, and I just couldn't drop off every night because I had gotten too altered. It
Right.
was like falling off a cliff. And every time
Yeah.
my assemblage point would drop, I would wake up instantly. So there was no sleeping happening.
Yeah.
But that's where I discovered that we don't need the things we think we do.
Yeah.
This is where you break into these layers where you like the. I used to be so scared of injuring myself as a carpenter because I wasn't sleeping,
Hmm.
during an unhealthy time in my life as an insomniac because I was so stressed out about money and providing, and I didn't have, the capacity to carry the weight that I was carrying because I was carrying more than myself. I was dragging somebody along that wasn't able to,
Yeah.
take care of themselves. And I was just getting really stressed out, and that was manifesting in physical injuries and then insomnia. And so I was always, the scariest thing in the world to me was not sleeping and then getting injured, like walking walls and
Hmm.
framing and then so that fear became a problem I had to overcome. And so spirit set it up so that I had to learn how to go without sleep. And now I can go to the job site and totally function without sleep and do all kinds of things,
Yeah.
physically and mentally. I'm sharp, and so I came out of that program that we need um, sleep, that we need food, that we need even water at times. When you trust in
Yeah.
the dry fasting process, when your body tells you to, it feels so good to let your body go into that state. So yeah, there's just so many breakthroughs that warriors naturally are shown to go through as a means to be able to just interact
You're
with
cutting out.
what's coming. And so the future self is informing us. Be good?
It's too bad. You know what's cool is we just lost what you said, but it's recorded on your computer, so we'll get it later.
Albert, cool. I'll get
Yeah. So it's a really
love it.
cool platform for that.
Awesome.
I lost where we were at, but somebody actually
Gotcha.
asked a
Yeah.
question in the chat, and
Okay.
I mean it's a kind of a really common question, really, but we
Cool.
could give it a shot. Do you think
Yeah.
narcissists are NPCs or demon possessed souls?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole planet needs an exorcism, the whole plane. Everyone is under the influence of a force that they're unaware of. So there is a possession that we're dealing with. And I don't believe in NPCs. I think there's raw
Yeah.
awareness under every creature. And it's just that they're so heavily programmed that they might as well be NPCs. They're just as, it's that concerning. And if we don't, the Flyers have done such a significant job of programming people that we are heading in a direction that we will perish if we don't wake up and remember what we are.
Yeah.
And that's why these times that we're in are so powerful, that we get to be the people kind of on the front lines, um, willing to look at what's coming at us and not lie to ourselves about it and prepare ourselves accordingly. And saving energy is not something that you do in a religious way or
Yeah.
even like a Sufi way or anything. It has to be creative, right? It has to be impeccable rather than disciplined in order to work. Because the
Yeah.
disciplined people end up thinking, Don Juan said, if you deny yourself something, you deny yourself what you want, and then you call that discipline.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work. You got to
No.
get to know what you like. You got to get to know yourself, and then figure out a way to enjoy this world immensely,
For
right?
sure.
So otherwise, you won't be able to have enough joy. The greatest accomplishment of a warrior is joy. And so
Yeah.
narcissism's just a product of self-importance. And if you look at everyone, most people have some aspect of it.
Oh yeah.
And it's just a matter of being honest with oneself. Because a lot of people will admit they have holes in their consciousness, but when you try to show them what area they have it in, they will attack you and defend their unconsciousness
It's
because
very
there's too much,
difficult to stalk others.
yeah, or to properly reflect. So you find that
Yeah,
there, a lot of people aren't in their heart, they're in their mind, they're in their fear. They want to uphold a reality of who they are, and they're not comfortable facing a confronting reference point, which is the Castaneda material. Nobody really reads it and lets it get to them because it's confronting on so many levels.
yeah. And you were saying about, oh, I lost it. But the fact that you mentioned this, you also said this to Jason when you talked to him about Castanet, which was an amazing video, by the way. Everybody should watch that. Jason's an amazing guy, and he has so much power, right? And he's building this community that's really interesting. And this
Hmm.
totally relates to what you said, which is nobody is really an NPC. Everybody has this huge potential lying dormant underneath this sort of programming. And that's, I remember you said that's one of the things that the black magicians are most afraid of,
Yep.
is that something would wake up that dormant seed.
Yeah,
And
that's our.
and yeah, and since I started looking at the world this way,
Mm.
especially with a lot of the things that I've learned, how fast people can change, once they adopt certain techniques, like these obese people
Mm.
could look like you and me within a few months,
Hmm.
right? So then I started looking at every person as who they could be,
Sure, totally.
and it really showed me how powerful this world is. Like
Mm.
it's just waking up now. We're at the second seal according to the chronology, and the
Yep.
power. Like I had this vision in not last tourist, the one before, like over a year and a quarter ago, and I saw this cataclysm. I told you, I remember I told you on our last talk, and I felt basically the situation where there was this mass dying in the earth, and
Mm.
the amount of power. So it's sort of like what's happening now. We're having
Mm.
this huge amount of war and genocide, and it's increasing uh, the vibration of power. Basically, it's sending more power to everyone. So like the conversations get louder, the meditations get deeper. So it's kind of like when we look at the potential, then the potential starts to come out when we just see it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's incredible, man. Every individual is, one of the Russian dreamers I've spoken with said that one day one person will discover one thing that will change everything forever.
Mm.
So we're all inventors, we're all channeling, we're all an extension, and yeah, that raw awareness, the courage spreads like wildfire, just like
Yeah.
fear. And so if we kind of need our backs at the wall
Mm-hmm.
in a sense in order to finally have the courage to walk toward the thing that's walking toward us. And essentially, once we do that, then we will move past fear as a large enough group to move into
Yeah.
clarity, and then we'll be able to usher people into back into power, and we'll start having a world that's similar like to the Wheel of Time, like Robert Jordan, a fictional writer, writes about a time where people can dream travel to each other and just walk in and out of different pockets, or there's like they call them ways, like closets. You walk in a door and you go into another,
Like in
you
the
basically,
Matrix.
yeah, you just go basically wherever you want through these doorways. And we learn to create them, we learn to find them, we learn how to open portals that have been closed and start to use them carefully again because they had to be shut down because they were being misused. And there's a lot of really magical people in the background that are working with the earth, and are, so forces rise to meet each other. So it may seem like there's this just, you know, it's only going one,
Overwhelming.
but it's the force as transhumanism rises, so does our natural remembering of our shamanic potential. It could, just make all the difference in the world when the 100th monkey aspect of things kicks in, because there's a great desire to return to our power, to learn how to save our energy and how to reclaim our energy, Youthful energy is just a beautiful thing. It should be celebrated instead of people trying to take it from others. So there's a massive healing coming, for those that are ready, and the waves of support and energy that will assist us. But it is ultimately up to us as individuals to notice the areas in our life, that are no longer supporting the person we're becoming.
Yeah.
And then you notice that by energy loss. You can tell when
Yeah.
something's off. I've been doing this and this works and this doesn't. And we were born with a finite amount of energy, and we dispersed it because our parents taught us to do what they do, to
Yeah.
just not let it rise too much. And then we just mimicked their behavior. So the healing that can happen when you give your pain to the earth and then receive the fresh earth energy, then you get sort of a reset moment, and you start to understand as an electrical creature how to make sure that you don't fry your system, by going too far too fast. And so the human part of this journey is very heart based. We want to be with our emotions, because a lot of men on this path try to move past their trauma and avoid it, and convince themselves that they're much further advanced.
The Stoics.
And yeah, or even like the Messiah complex is really typical for people that come into this material. They're like, oh my God, I am the one,
I felt
because
that at the
yeah,
beginning, 2
yeah,
years ago, when I found out your stuff, and it gave me so much power that it really got to my head.
yeah. So we go through those stages of cockiness. Don Juan says it's unavoidable,
Yeah.
because you're developing your confidence and you're aware of things, and so we want to really be authentic and honest with ourselves, and find people in our life. Like my partner is very powerful. Rachel helps me to, recognize the areas in which I'm not able to see for myself. I also work with teachers and people that help me, that are powerful space holders for me to get to deeper levels of my somatic, energetic feelings that I can access on my own, but it's so much easier when you have somebody helping. So, we don't have to do this on our own. There's all kinds of support.
It's funny. It's bringing me to a quote. I had just wanted to say you led right into it. It's so the synchronicity is amazing, man. So this is from Torres, the guy who supposedly became the confidant of Carlos at the end and wrote a
Sure.
bunch of stuff that he didn't want him to write while he was alive, which is really
Yep.
interesting.
Yep.
This is from the Secrets of the Plumed Serpent.
Mm.
Since we are left to our own resources, we have only one option: to preserve the energy we were born with. Impeccable warriors don't need anyone to guide them, as saving energy becomes self-explanatory to those who are attempting to be more aware.
Beautiful.
So
Yes.
yeah, like you said, it helps to have guides. But in the case where we don't, then finding the energy leaks is the
Yeah.
way to
And
go.
that's ultimately at some stage in the development, you'll find yourself alone,
Yeah.
because it's necessary to discover the all oneness that comes from being alone. We're
And
not
not leaning.
separate. So
Yeah.
we might look at situations that occur in our life as tragic, but they're all just absolutely necessary. Every little bit of every single thing that happens in your dream is just a message, and it's your future self like reverse engineered your storyline in order to get you to who you are, because things are not linear. And then you start having deja vu all the time, and you start having vision because you're being informed of what's coming.
The
And then
signs.
that's how you develop your impeccability, is like you're listening on a deep level that isn't in the realm of thought. You're just getting
Mm.
really strong direct feelings, and you learn to trust them instead of thinking about those feelings or trying to intellectualize them.
Yeah.
You become capable of just, enjoying those feelings because they guide you. So the more sensitive you become, the more grounded you're going to have to get. But
It's
that
also
sense,
very energizing, right? Because the world, this vampire world that is there, is draining, and then when we find that silence where we don't grasp everything mentally, we start finding our energy back.
it leads to the energy body. It leads
Yeah.
to the discovery that we've been isolated. Our perception's been isolated to a limited way of interacting with all of our capacity, and so it's a total revolution. And then it's just a matter of learning how to be honest with what your dreaming body, like impeccability is listening to your energy body and what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the physical will be taken care of as long as you're taking care of your energy body. It's a
Yeah.
totally different thing.
It's difficult to explain to people that are trying, for example, to see what do we do about Gaza, and you're telling them, go meditate,
Totally,
right?
yeah. Well,
Like,
Gaza doesn't even exist.
exactly.
It's all an illusion. Everything we
Yeah.
think we're observing is a dream. It's a vision that's being carried out. There's other entire visions where entire other wars and they're all just
Yeah.
dreams. And so as dreamers, our attention determines our reality. Like I'm here in Montana. We just had a bunch of people come for a powerful
Oh
first
yeah,
time.
you just had your first retreat.
Yeah, we're in the middle of it. We're gonna go on 2-day tour today and tomorrow into the mountains and do the movements at
Wow.
really remote places. And most beautiful people I've ever met in my life just all came, and it was just absolutely, yeah. So as these things happen, and you start to observe and come to terms with the potential of human mass and just how
Mm-hmm.
magical these times that we're in, and move out of the mind, then the vision of what is needs to happen, then you become guided
Yeah.
rather than manifesting. I'm not
Thinking that you
manifesting.
can like solve everything mentally, but that's not how it works.
Oh, you have to like really listen and get out of the way and then get in the way so that you
Yeah.
can be pushed. It's kind of like allowing yourself to, when you're climbing a mountain, if you get silent, you'll be pulled up the mountain. Your
Mm.
body is doing the work. Your legs are not moving like you think. You start to become this floating creature that's just being like escalated, like you're on an escalator.
Yeah.
Same thing can happen in your life where like it becomes very, you're
Fluid.
not having to use effort.
Yeah.
It becomes effortless because you moved into so the assemblage point is fixated in this place of reason, but once it starts to live in silent knowledge, then you have this capacity to not take on the world. So the shamans say, the Toltec say, we have no business following the ups and downs of our fellow man.
Yeah.
And so we have to be detached from these stories of war uh, and I'm not saying if you feel a calling to go to Palestine or go to these
Exactly.
places to observe, then do
Go there.
so. Yeah, like don't be afraid because your fear is what will open you up to getting injured or having something happen. But if you're
Yeah.
fearless and you're listening, you'll be totally insulated. Like the universe will move. It'll literally give you all the warnings. It'll protect you and guide you, so we don't have to live in fear of anything or anyone or any situation. But it's not easy to reach that state of fearlessness.
I would even say if you get injured and you were without fear, then it's because that injury has a role to play.
Totally. Yeah, all of it. It's all necessary, and I think we spend our whole lot. Most people spend their whole lives being at odds with things and
Yeah.
wishing things were different, rather than embracing things as they are. And it's just you save so much energy when you're not fighting what's happened or trying to convince yourself that it should be different. And so bitterness and resentment, shame and guilt, these are the things that end up keeping people from discovering their power. So, or, again, the
There
illusion
are
of grand.
difficult teachers. The things that teach us by harming us, by
Mm,
grinding us in the dirt. And I owe so much to my injuries. Like every time I have one on my knee, I have one on my, I have the new teeth there, and every time I become conscious of them, there's a part of that teaching that gets reinforced. Like it keeps it strong. Like
totally.
people have lost loved ones, and I know you shared a really
Mm,
compelling experience that you had with a child that
mm,
became a guide, and how our death, even thinking about our death, is very much getting advice on the value of life,
mm.
on and on the power of that experience of that death. Because when we contemplate it, we see how vast and mysterious, and in a way compelling. Like I can understand people who walk to their death in a way sometimes, because it has that allure about it that
Yeah.
it's going to
Totally.
be different, and if you don't like what's here, then people get pulled in that.
Yeah, man, it's powerful. I did a mock suicide, and put a knife to my throat and
Yeah,
dug a grave. But when I put that knife to my throat, there was a force that showed up that tried to get me to plunge it in. It was
yeah,
like, whoa, dude, I get it. Like people deal with incredible pressure at times because it's like, you know, obviously the flyers want to keep us alive so they can feed off of
right,
us. But sometimes if they think they're losing control of you, they might try to get you to move into suicidal areas so that they can get rid of you. If
right.
you're a threat to the programming. So you end up having to get really strong and be very close with your death and become aware that you're going to die. We behave
Yeah,
on autopilot as if we have all the time in the world. You
we
can
do.
use you can use each day as if it's your last. And by doing so, really honest with yourself. What do you want to do with this day if it was your last? And start really allowing yourself full permission to experience what that feels like. And that's where impeccability is discovered, is being not just being a robot that does what you think you're supposed to do because your dad made you feel like you have to be responsible in this particular way. So people think, well, why would you go to work if it's your last day? I'm like, because spirit will show up at work.
Yeah,
I can go to the construction site and have straight magic all day long. I'm listening to the greatest music in my ear. I'm talking
mm,
to powerful men that have warrior capacities in one area that I'm benefiting just from being in their presence, even though they're not shamanic, they're warriors of a type.
yeah. Like
And so you can,
sportsmen and artists. Yeah,
the
absolutely.
world's
I
full of,
used to hang around people that did sports,
yeah,
around artists a lot, travelers.
uh,
Everybody who does something to the extreme is basically doing a form of sorcery, a form of moving their
sure.
assemblage point, and it's really
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. Even doctors, they spend in medical school, they move their assemblage point to teach them how to focus in on the most precise
Hmm.
cuts. And they become very powerful, and but their egos typically
Yeah.
come with that they think that they know things and they've been convinced they have an understanding. And so what's going to be really exciting is seeing more of these people have to face the fact that they've been lied to, and that they're hurting people with their diagnoses and their,
Oh, it's very confronting.
yeah, it's going to be
Yeah, it's
wild.
it's gonna be hard for some people, basically almost impossible. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, people will turn into monsters the more you expose their cognitive dissonance. And so we're going to have some berserkers on our hands.
yeah, I think a lot of them are already showing up. No, I can tell you. I don't know if you've been on Twitter lately, but it's so amazing that your retreat thing happened at this time, and this is the why I want to maybe touch on why I wanted to pick this time. It
Hmm.
was a very specific time, as you know. Like we tried to meet. Actually, it was 4 months ago,
Hmm.
and you something happened.
Hmm.
And these are very powerful astrologically, I'm discovering, as you
Hmm.
can witness, right? Like this is a powerful time for you.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to do this. It's sort of, I'm trying to set up spirit. You know, I'm trying to set up the dream, if you will, like get all the ducks in a row, and then not really think about all the details, like what am I gonna say and stuff. Every time I swear, like you're you were such a big influence for me, right? That now my image of you has become something I have to deal with, and
Sure.
so I thought about what I'm gonna say, and or is he gonna show up, and then every time it became a reminder for my silence.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Beautiful.
it's been a very powerful journey
Mm.
to study astrology and numerology, and at the same time not get caught by it.
That's cool. I like that.
Because when you study numerology, there's so many numbers in our world, like plate license numbers and like door numbers. You should ask my partner. It's sometimes she has to like she has to stop herself because
Mhm.
she starts doing it because she's picking it up from me, and she's like, look, 23. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, no, just wait till there's a couple in a row. Like, see 2 or 3 23s all in like 1 minute, then tell me.
Yeah, cool. Cool.
Right? So
Yeah, I mean,
I had to learn. I get
I've seen
pulled into the learning, and then I have to let it go for a while. And like, it's really interesting.
absolutely, brother. Yeah, the decoding can become can consume you, and people can
Yeah.
get spun out. So having a sober perspective on learning how to, you know, receive your signs and omens. Your signs and omens will guide you in your life for sure. But there's also sometimes some, there's a time to be really, move into just pure feeling and not necessarily rely on the external, just so that you know the difference. But yeah, it's all available. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And there's somebody who said that same person was making a few comments while we were talking. And there's one interesting thing. He said that he nearly died of a suicide, but it
Mm,
did nothing, saw no vision. So maybe I would say to him, and maybe you can comment on that, that it's still, the experience is there, maybe
mhm.
locked away,
Yeah.
right? And if he put himself to the task of remembering that experience, that vision, which probably took place,
Mhm.
then he would call it back into,
Yeah, I mean, when you learn to recapitulate, you go back in the memories and you realize there was so much more going on than you were aware of at the time.
yeah,
And so like it's kind of like people can smoke DMT and have such profound experiences, but not be able to recall a lot of it as well sometimes. And everyone's different capacities with their assemblage point. Like everyone's assemblage point moves in order to go to sleep,
yeah,
and everybody has dreams, whether they know it or not.
yeah,
They just might be, you know, they may appear to be dormant because their assemblage point might be moving to a place that's just so far from their normal position. But when you
yeah,
start to learn how to live in silent knowledge, then dreaming is very similar to the type of heightened awareness activities that you're doing in this waking dream. And then the worlds start to mix where
yeah,
you don't know if you're asleep or awake, and it doesn't
exactly.
matter because it's all a dream. But that's where you can get really lost. Like I know children that were raised, in the medicine and not properly, and so they can't see
You mean with the
things.
psychedelics?
No, just like my elder had a lot of powerful wives that
Mm,
were all apprentices, and then they had a lot of children. He was supposedly the seat of power, so his children had a genetic capacity to be
right.
really magical creatures. So a lot of kids that were raised in that world because of how much power they were given through this sorcerer being their father, a lot of them had erratic assemblage points and they couldn't see the world in front of them. So they end up in mental wards because they're
Mm,
just too dangerous to themselves and others. Because they're looking at another world while they're in this one. So they're stepping, off of cliffs or into traffic, or all
yeah.
kinds of things can happen to these people. It's really sad because they're so powerful. If somebody could train them, Even if we could go into the mental wards and start training people,
I think
like,
this is going to happen.
yeah,
And this relates to what you were saying about how parents basically suppressing our power in that light. It's a
yeah,
way of protecting us from a
yeah,
world that is not adapted to to people in heightened awareness. Like there's a story of Castaneda had a daughter,
mm,
and she was taken up by the sorcerers, by the seers.
mm,
She wasn't even raised by him. I don't know if you remember that, but
mm,
he even had a ceremony where he made Carlos sit and said, "This is your daughter," and he was serving him a stew. Of course, it wasn't like his daughter in the stew, but he made him regain his luminosity
mm,
by sort of going through this ritual of eating his daughter. And then the seers raised her, and at one point he said that they brought her into the States, and in order
mm,
to cross the border, they had to put her in the trunk of the car
mm,
because she wouldn't have been able to deal with like the agents at the border.
mm. Wow.
I don't remember
Yeah,
which book that's in, but yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, Carlos was taught how to reclaim his luminosity from not only his children, but or his child, but from other. He raised some children that weren't
oh
his children. So it wasn't, like, you could be a stepfather and lend your luminosity to that child without
yeah,
them being on your own, depending on how powerful the bond becomes or how toxic,
yeah,
right?
you'll
So
give
there's
them
all,
power.
yeah, and it's a beautiful thing if it's in harmony. You're willing to lend a chunk of your energy to someone and help them, and then naturally they will return it to you when they become an adult. But if they don't, or they try to sever the connection in a brutal way, like if a child like tries to disappear from his parents, which is a powerful act sometimes that shamans do at a young age, is leave their family.
Yeah,
But vice versa, it could be a child that's just really disrespectful to a powerful parent that is
mm,
trying, raise them in a beautiful way. And so these power exchanges, like what Donna Soledad and Pablito went through, was they were pitted against each other as mother and child
yeah,
to see who was going to have the energy that came from that lineage, from that ancestry line. So, we're moving into a time where those extremes aren't necessary because the human mass that we're going to have access to won't be these private little sorcerer parties. We're going to
yeah.
have huge flocks
More
of birds.
protected. Yeah, not fearing for their lives all the time, not having to take care of everything, and with access to techniques like we're talking about body magic, or that's what I call it actually, the magical passes.
Sure.
And if I read the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is I think one of the best treatises on yoga, it starts off with saying the asanas, which is what people call yoga generally speaking, where you do the poses, the body work, because yoga is so much more than that.
Sure.
And he says that that's the beginning because it gives fluidity and lightness and energy. So
Mhm.
it's very much a centerpiece, and now we have more and more and more techniques and more guides. It's like you said, the process is going to be expedited
Yes.
for
Yeah.
people. Like for me,
Yeah.
I feel like I've done what maybe you did or some people did in 10 years. I did it in 2
Cool. Yeah.
because it's so
Totally.
much
Like we're.
support, and then the flat earth and all this stuff. It just like, see, the world is mysterious beyond any conception. So it's like
Yep.
you get all these um, confirmation.
Yeah. For Rachel and I, things are, as we uh, offer these courses and open this door for people to learn in this way, we're being put through the most powerful process in an expedited fashion.
Yeah,
We've
I bet.
changed more in this last year than we've changed our whole lives.
Yeah,
It's just, oh
I
my
saw
God.
it in you. I see it in your just how you look.
But yeah, it's we're healing our relationship and our family as well as our individual path, is therefore able to become
Amazing.
our priority, and we're not enmeshed right? So learning, sometimes a relationship, which ours was totally dysfunctional and still is
Yeah.
on some level, the spirit is still guiding us to face each other and learn from
Mm.
each other and to hold space for community. So it's an abstract relationship. It's not some fantasy Disneyland concept of, marriage that's just, you know, uh, it's mixing the shadow work with, uh, you know, really
The world.
a new form of recapitulating that we're discovering just by learning from each other and then offering these different ways of approaching the Toltec material. The lineage has followed us. We're being guided and ushered into a brand new paradigm that's
Yeah.
personal to us to offer the world. So it's just been really beautiful.
Yeah, and we're being guided to present the teaching even in different ways. Um, maybe
Or
you,
I was
and
going to remain private. And then the fact that I got shown to do this, it's just, oh, like, okay, I get that this is the
when you
next
mean you
stage.
started your YouTube?
Yeah, like before I was going to just remain, just a student.
Yeah.
But being pushed into the teacher role has forced me to change in a way that
Yeah.
I would have never even considered. And so now it's like I'm listening more than ever because it's not about my ideas of how it's supposed to look. You
Yeah.
know,
Because you're taking people under your wing, and
there's a
uh,
responsibility.
yeah, that's how I feel too about just taking this role, making these podcasts, getting out there, and
Sure,
talking about what I've learned, even though I don't have all this experience like you.
sure,
Although I would say, we all have had our different paths of
totally,
power,
totally.
but it's put me on the spot, and I appreciate that in a way, and I can see what you're talking about. It's very, it's empowering in a way
Yeah,
to put yourself in that position where you're trying to represent what in a different form. Like you've been saying, you should read the books in order, and
right,
I was telling people that at first, but then the first two books I would say are a little bit hard to get through.
sure.
They're not, yeah. So now I've been telling people, oh no, read this book, because I'm sort of
Well,
trying to give them a prognosis. Like this book is good for you, but then once you're done, maybe go through the whole thing.
yeah, no,
And
that's great. I agree,
plus,
actually.
we're representing this material now.
Yeah, it's like, Carlos, he got frustrated at one stage. He said, "Stop reading the books. Like
Mm.
I've changed so much since I wrote those
Yeah.
books." Right? He almost at one point he said, "I wish I hadn't wrote them." But I'm so glad that he did. Don Juan knew why he made Carlos write him. Don Juan foresaw what was coming. He knew those books were going to be needed. So
It's
yeah, I'm glad
crazy, the
you.
storm that just came in, man. There's like hail, and my wife is having to like batten down the windows. So
Uh,
maybe this is a sign. I think we're at an hour now.
yeah, yeah, perfect.
And I would love to do this again.
Sure,
Um, so we'll. Here, actually, one more thing before I go. Is there anything you want to talk about? What you're working on, what you're offering,
sure.
before we go?
Yeah, brother. Thank you. So September 22nd coming up and the 24th. So I'll be offering a 9-week online course called Multiplicity, where we'll be looking at all the different parts of ourselves, all the different aspects of who we've been, and as well as look at our parallel lives and start to understand our multiplicity. And then on December 6th and 7th, or that weekend, I'll be doing an in-person workshop in Montana. Um, and so all of that will be available on my website.
I'm showing
So
your website now,
perfect.
joelschafer.com.
Well, yeah, I haven't put the in-person yet, but the second weekend of December, and then Rachel's offering a woman's journey, starts in October. I highly recommend for any women that really want to awaken the depths of their feminine.
Yeah,
She's
Rachel's amazing.
Yeah. So what
She's
she's
an amazing
offering
being.
is life changing for women. and I really recommend that, yeah, people check it out. So appreciate your time, brother. That's
I
yeah.
appreciate your time, and I recommend everybody give your course a try. And Rachel, especially women. And here I'm showing my website right
Sweet.
now, goldragon.creom.net. And so if you want to do this again, let's hook up
Yeah, let's do it.
and have an amazing retreat with your people,
Thanks,
Joel.
brother. See you,
And
man.
may you find intent, peace, and power.
Much love, brother. Thank you. You too.
Bye.
See you next time.